Welcome to Profiles in Leadership. I'm Jack Myers. My guest this week is Joseph Jaffe. Uh, there is so much to be said about Joe that I will hold it until I say, Joe, welcome to Profiles in Leadership. It's good to see you.
I love that opening almost as much as I enjoyed saying, welcome Jack Myers to my show.
And you have a much more sophisticated and formal opening with video clips and music. So I regret
Gimmicks.
not being able to give you a fanfare.
No, just gimmicks. I don't have that beautiful trophy behind me, nor I don't know, what is that monstrosity of a machine? I'm joking.
I know it's so old fashioned. Young people have no idea what that is. That's called a typewriter.
Oh, I love it.
It's a distant relative of the printing press, Gutenberg's printing press. This is an Underwood. And believe it or not, that's actually not the physical machine I learned to type on, but that is the I did learn on that type of typewriter, and fortunately, we've gone significantly past it. Joe, I was honored to be on your podcast called Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. You are famous in many ways. Been a keynote speaker in more than 50 countries around the world. Written several books. You've been a CMO, a entrepreneur, uh, and you're really known for thought leadership. Over 800 podcasts that you've recorded and are in your library. You focus on corporate transformation, and what I'm really excited to talk to you about is some of the thought leadership you offered. Your most recent book is called Forever Changed: How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. You also wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot, Join the Conversation, Flip the Funnel, Built to Suck: The Inevitable Demise of the Corporation and How to Save It.
With a
Recognition of
question
how
mark.
important that is. Yes. How to save it with the question mark. Good point. Well, let's talk about that question mark. I do want to get into a lot of different topics, but since you brought up that question mark on the inevitable demise of the corporation, you say that corporations were built to suck. I point out in my book, The Tao of Leadership, that corporations are still today built on the Peter Drucker concept of the corporation model that was based on World War II production line capabilities, and they mostly still operate that way. So, why the question mark after and how to save it?
Well, the question mark is because I don't know that they can be saved, whether it's the boiling frog syndrome, or the story of the frog and the scorpion about just being in my nature. You can literally, as they say, and I will just mix more metaphors. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make a drink. And so, be as prescriptive and clear as possible, and still the corporate empire will not be able to move forward or beyond. Now, the backdrop for the book, I walked into my daughter's classroom. I guess she was in maybe she was a sophomore in high school. She's now graduated from college, and I saw this beautiful chart, which is in the book, and it shows 5,000 years of history. And in these 5,000 years, you see every single civilization, dynasty, and empire, every single one: Ming, Ottoman, Romans, Egyptians, Nazi Germany, USSR, although they're trying to make a comeback. Um, Europe, which still had UK in it. And then at the very bottom is, and did I mention Nazi Germany? And at the bottom, also trying to make a comeback. And then at the very bottom is USA. And every single dynasty, empire, civilization, every single one, and bar, let's say, the last 10 or 15 years with a question mark, have failed. None of them could outlast or outwit, sounds like Survivor, the sands of time. All of them succumbed to arrogance, to hubris, to megalomaniacal thinking. And I looked at it and I said, well, if the corporation were an empire, a dynasty, might it too go the same way? Now, there is actually a life cycle. I didn't even realize it at the time when I wrote the book, of about 150 years associated with dynasties. And Bank of New York, which is the oldest corporation in this dynasty, in this empire, is about 140 years old. So your time is up. Suckage is inevitable. The premise behind the book is that the very thing that helped these companies grow and rise, size, scale, economies of scale, being a multinational company now, is an albatross around its neck. It's become less competitive. It's slowing down when the world is speeding up. Talk about technology and AI, which of course very close to your heart. And so what's happened is more bureaucratic, more siloed, more dysfunctional, more political. How on earth is this monolith or this monstrosity? We talk about creative destruction or giganticism or diseconomies of scale. How arrogant are we to think that we somehow are going to make it when everyone else before us have not? So that's the premise. And the question mark is, I can tell you exactly what to do, but are you going to do it? I can tell you you're 400 pounds overweight, and if you don't actually get healthy and start to lose weight, you're going to die, and still you are your own worst enemy.
Joseph, in my book, I have a couple of chapters that are focused on my own frustration of having been an advisor and consultant in the, we'll call it the advertising, but more the legacy media category, and how frustrated I am today by the consistent failure at every opportunity to embrace and invest in the future. And it was not only their own lack of creativity, innovation, ability to change, but it was also Wall Street's inability to support legacy companies while the venture capital marketplace boomed and allowed other companies to grow and compete. So what are the solutions for the legacy companies that you would argue at the end of their lifespan?
I just realized that I'm actually Ricky Gervais because I'm like, I don't care. I don't care anymore. I don't serve these companies anymore. These fat cats in their boardrooms. I don't put up with their BS anymore. Like I'm completely free, liberated, and untethered. The book Built to Suck is the kind of it's the love letter or the hate letter that actually says, you know, try read the book, implement this or don't. I don't care. But I will tell you what I wrote about in the book. I wrote about, first of all, maybe one of the concepts I'm most proud of in my entire career, and it's this idea of what's your heresy. Embrace your heresy in order to define your legacy. So there are 10 heresies. Like, for example, what if you gave away your product for free and still no one wanted it? It's called the newspaper industry. It's like there are examples for everything. What if you slaughtered the cash cow? Look at what Netflix did with their DVD business. So are you prepared to put yourself out of business before someone else does? And I even give the example of, I remember, I don't know if I mentioned the magazines. I may as well mention them because they're no longer there. There was Bride magazine and Modern Bride. They were both Condé magazines, and I was asked to come down to this beautiful conference in Jamaica and talk about the rise of digital. We're talking like 2006. And they said, we want a hard hitting keynote. Come in and tell us what we need to hear. And oh, but by the way, the publisher's there, so don't say anything bad about the magazine business. And of course I did. And I was like shunned to like I was kicked off the island. I had to like stand in the corner on the beach while they all ate meat. But like I literally said to them, what if like you need to think of your digital property on the same level playing field and par as your magazine, as your print property. Let them compete with one another, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, if your magazine represents a base of 100 and now digital comes along and your magazine share drops to 70, but now digital is 60, well, guess what? 70 plus 60 equals 130, and you've expanded the size of the pie. None of those magazines, one of them has gone out of business and the other one has been sold. So
So
like,
let's fast forward that very talk that you gave in Jamaica, 2006 to 2026. We're now next year, and you're talking to pick one, any of the legacy media companies, and the topic is AI and machine intelligence. And what are you saying now?
The message and there is already a stake in the ground that says um, that you AI won't put you out of business. AI will put the people that don't embrace it out of business, or something. You know that even you use that line as well, which is it's not so like it's the if you can't beat them, join them approach, right? It's the experimentation approach. One of the things that has annoyed me to no end in my career is it's like a mix and match or shake and bake. It's like test with an N and a little apostrophe, test and learn. It's the experimentation that companies do is so superficial and so siloed, and they do it just to check a box, as opposed to a meaningful experiment and then some process associated with, of course, I've spent a lot of time in the startup world. And when I had my company Evolution, we had a matrix, and there were four basically, there were four quadrants. So the big L, you do something and it is an absolute abysmal failure. That's a big L. We call that discontinue, not discontinue, but discontinue. It was actually a spelling. Someone made a mistake on my team, and I was like, no, 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 keep it there. It's brilliant. Discontinue, because when you make the mistake before your competitors do, when you do something because you can, not when you have to, when the stakes are smaller, that is a discount, on the future, right? You're getting a gift. So now the small L is the idea of the pivot. Something didn't work. Well, let's change another variable. Let's do something else. Let's not walk away. And then the small W was rinse and repeat. Do it again. Well, why stop now? And then of course scale with success was the big W. So what I would be saying is I would use the word experiment, but with sufficiency. Do it properly. Do it strategically. And get beyond all these annoying window dressing, the labs, all these stupid companies with their labs, where everyone just comes along and they want to play around just to be able to check a box. I mean, I heard this. What's his name? Sam? Is it Sam Harris? He was being interviewed on Diary of a CEO, and he said something, Jack. I think I mentioned it to you. It's still I might get a little bit wrong, but it's not. But conceptually, it's right. He said, let's assume for a second that AI is no smarter than humans, no smarter than Jack Myers or Joseph Jaffe. Is that even possible? Like, oh, we are 2001. No, and so let's just assume AI is just as smart as us, but based on the speed of processing, right? What would take us 10,000 years to complete, AI can do in a weekend. That's where we're heading.
Your description of the change that needs to take place in terms of how
That's
companies experiment,
competitiveness.
I call it portals, not
I
bridges.
I loved that I was looking at it actually just yesterday. Portals, not bridges. When I wrote the summary article. Oh, by the way, I didn't write the summary article. AI did. So there's one of those best practices. I call it plagiarizing myself. I took our conversation, took the MP3 of our video, uploaded it, got a transcript, uploaded the transcript into ChatGPT with the prompts and all the managing and the nurturing and the noodling and the backwards and forwards. I was able to create a summary article in about 10 seconds, right? And then I go and I read the article and I edit the article. So the job is not done. It's not just, like kind of, set it and forget it, right? That's not how we should be using AI, but it's the ability to collapse time and create a compelling summary of a very compelling conversation between myself and a very compelling Jack Myers.
So you talk about kind of you don't care, you're disengaged, but yet your whole business model today, which I'd love you to talk about from your latest book on for being forever changed and changing your direction, your purpose, and your life. And you're sitting in your virtual background, which is a an office. It is a consulting room where you do your work, and your work is related to the entrepreneurial operating system and being an implementer. So obviously, you still care, you still have some passion, some motivation. So tell me
Oh,
about
I
that.
care deep. I care deeply. I know, I care deeply, but my energy and my focus is focused on people and places and projects that are going to affect and impact as many lives positively as possible. And it's not a consulting room; it's a session room. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher, facilitator, and a coach. I'm not a consultant anymore. I'm not a keynote speaker anymore. No, everything I do post 2020, March 2020, is different to what I did before. So going back to the idea of being forever changed, I work with small, medium businesses. I work with privately held businesses, 10 to 250 employees. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to work with construction companies and a meat manufacturer and an exit advisory firm and a urgent care, facilities and affect and actually help them grow. Because as you know, Jack, most small businesses will never make it. And even more pronounced with startups. Most of them will never ever get to the next level. And
And
so
we
to
have more
actually
startups and entrepreneurs today than ever before.
yeah. So EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, is, it's a proven system. It's just a set of tools with the help of a coach to really drive three things, right? Which is, we say, vision, traction, healthy. So alignment and clarity of vision of where the business is going and how to get it there. Traction is discipline and accountability around executing the vision. And healthy is team health. And this is building strong leadership teams. Where our worlds connect again is we're talking about leadership. Gino Wickman, who is the founder of EOS, he's conducted 2,000 sessions, 14,000 hours in session. And in his opinion, there is only one determinant of success in a business, only one. There isn't even a close second, and that is a strong leadership team. So I've internalized that is my mission, to help build strong leadership teams, to recognize that a leadership team is a system within a system, and how to create that synergy, that energy, that collaboration. That's the key to success. Now, if you think about, you can absolutely extrapolate that and think of a large company. They've got MLTs and SLTs and ELTs. And I joked the other day, they probably have BLTs as well. Take your bacon, lettuce, and tomato. And they are unwieldy. And there's 12 people in a room, and there's politics and there's politicking, and it's just an energy drain and a time suck. So build a strong team. Michael Jordan, when he went to the Bulls, it took 6 years to win anything. He had no chance. He got shellacked by the Pistons every year until Scottie Pippen came along, and then thankfully a coach, yay coach, Phil Jackson came along, and they built a team. So it's not that hard. And that's why, like, you talk about the Tao of leadership and these core values and these tenets, right? I mean, we're singing from the same songbook or playbook. It's just that I'm focusing on slightly smaller companies, and you're focusing on hopefully giving that shot in the arm to these legacy, brands.
There is a reality of the need for management to build the leadership teams that work today and more importantly into the future. There is a dynamic change that's taking in what defines leadership, what are the tools of leadership. And one of those tools you talk about, you published on LinkedIn, your the 10 things you learned in 2024. And I was fascinated especially by number 9, there's no place for fear in an organization. What we're seeing in many organizations is that the fundamental strength of their top leaders is that they manage by fear. People are afraid to tell them the truth, speak truth to power. And even today, if you say the wrong thing, you could be outed, fired, canceled, whatever. So how do you navigate the reality that you're training leaders, but what are you training them to do and to be?
Well, first of all, the example that I've written about, actually wrote about it in Built to Suck, is GE. I mean, look at the demise of GE, and I think it was Flannery who was the chairman, who they practiced success. They had success theater there. Like no one was allowed to bring bad news. No one was allowed to. So you live in a bubble, in a vacuum, which is different to the reality distortion field that Steve Jobs lived in, but you've got to know when to step in and out of that reality distortion field. When we talk about fear, and I will tell you, last year, last year I took a little bit of a sabbatical, and I got to lick my lips and prove to myself that yes, I am a CMO and a damn good one. But now I'm back, coaching full time, and I was juggling that for a while. But I'll tell you, the person that reported into me, it was a small team within a startup. He said, the best thing about working for you, I mean, I actually like feel emotional about it. He said, I wasn't afraid. He said, I wasn't afraid to come to work every day. I wasn't afraid like I have been in the past. I was like, what a beautiful thing. I mean, I absolutely cherish that statement, to actually not fear your boss or fear your situation. Um, Lencioni, and it's something actually that we coach and teach, is that when he wrote The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, the very basis of the pyramid is what is trust. And it's actually building what he calls vulnerability based trust, which means the things that you say will not be used against you. And what that means is the ability to raise your hand and say, I don't understand, or I'm weak, or I'm afraid, or, or I'm insecure. You're not going to, that's not going to now be used against you to kind of diminish you or shame you, or belittle you or ultimately oust you. And that's the basis. If you can create a foundation of vulnerability based trust, it creates a chain reaction in an organization. And so there is no place for fear. Life is too short, in our time, especially now with these cycles that we live in, where like, the goalposts are moving. AI is just, it's just everything is just when we think we figured it out, the next five different waves are crashing. We don't have time for the BS of politics and fear, and pettiness. We just don't. Now, I will tell you the next rung on that pyramid is what's called healthy conflict. So when you can actually create that framework, you can, go tooth and nail. You can argue and debate and be passionate about the issues. But because you have that frame or that container, it isn't personal, and there is respect, and there is the ability to actually be secure enough to move, forward, as opposed to be held back with the minutia, as I said, in the pettiness. So yeah, I feel very strongly about that.
So stretching that out a bit, Joseph, and looking at the reality that leaders today are confronting as technology is advancing so quickly across so many sectors of the business, and so many businesses are locked into historic, outdated, obsolete business models. But yet, as we look at the path that we both believe in, which is a path where core values are important. Those values are more humanistic than they are technological, uh, whether it's empathy or intuition or creativity. Uh, Yet today, there is a hard pushback across all sectors of our government, business, and even our interpersonal relationships against the very core qualities of humanity, whether we want to call it inclusion, belonging, are being eliminated from the corporate language. How do you navigate that in the companies you're training?
Look, I have to tell you that I think this current argument about getting rid of DEI in favor of a meritocracy, it is such, just crap.
Bullshit? You
Um,
want to call it just bullshit?
yeah, well, it's bullshit because if it can be, so I will take the argument one step further, which is if that is true and you truly are hiring the best person for the job, fantastic, great, I agree. Let's go and hire the best people for the job. But when the people that actually end up in the job are not necessarily the best people, then it's a farcical argument, right? So I'm saying you take away DEI and you say, may the best man win. Well, that's what's happening. It's the best white man winning, and it's actually not the best white man winning. So if we can actually truly put the best person in the job, let's go for it. Let's always put the best person in the world, in that position. But the reality is, we're not actually putting the best person in the job. We're putting someone who's just good enough. Now, I will tell you something else, which is, and I've been saying this, like, I mean, listen, I come from South Africa, which is your boardroom, your C-suite, your leadership team should, at a minimum, mirror the customer you serve. At a minimum, should just mirror the customer you serve. Otherwise, how the hell, with all due respect, you and I are, I mean, you're a young buck, Jack, but we're two middle-aged white guys. Like, how on earth are we going to make decisions for a diverse population or for a predominantly female-based, consumer segment? It just this is basic, common sense, business sense, and strategic sense, right? So, like, I'm triangulating my response. And then the third part of it is surely we have an obligation as well. I didn't finish it, but in Built to Suck, there were four pillars. One was called digital disruption, which is business models and revenue streams, like not just programmatic and native, and let's just try and awful stuff, right? Digital disruption, customer obsession, talent resurrection, and corporate citizenship. The corporation needs to be a better citizen of the world because the corporation has an obligation and a responsibility to its community. And if you can be a public servant and offer a public service, wouldn't that endear more people towards you to actually be making a more substantial difference? So, to go back to this idea of like, just hiding, we're hiding behind initials. It's not just DEI, by the way, it's DEI and A. And the A, and I learned this from talking to people about it, is access. We need to give more people
Accessibility.
access to opportunities, access to the C-suite. It brings in mentoring, etc., as well. It's making sure we talk about the room where it happens, making sure we have the right people in the room, as opposed to oxygen invaders, which goes back to all these, obtuse, leadership team or MLTs and SLTs and ELTs of people that are there just, for because I don't know, because they've been there for 10 or 20 years. It's rubbish. And that's why, by the way, all of this comes down to a loss of competitiveness. So I'm happy to bring it back to bottom line. The reason why you suck is because you don't have the right people in the right seats, to quote Jim Collins and EOS. That's something we teach too.
One of the things that I've noticed, and since my book has come out and I've been having conversations, is a common thread of a couple of words that keep appearing in my conversations. One is kindness as a mantra for organizations and individuals, and the other is happiness. And that is something that I think you're uh, committed to and focused on. Tell me about your path toward finding happiness.
Well, I'm actually studying it right now. I've enrolled in a certificate in happiness studies. It's going to be 20 months, which I will hopefully upgrade to both a master's and a PhD. So, at this late stage of my life, at 54 years young, I am convinced. In fact, I don't have to be convinced. You just have to look at Helen Keller's essay on optimism, or Aristotle, or quite frankly, Jefferson talking about the pursuit of happiness. It is the ultimate goal. How do we find lasting happiness? And the answer is we don't pursue it directly. So that's the first thing. It's like looking at the sun. You can't. You need to be able to create a prism. There are models right now, but I'm trying to now connect the idea of how do you run a better business so you can lead a better life. And just in the last 2 days, I'm modifying my hypothesis to it's what I'm calling the pursuit of peace and the pursuit of happiness. Slowing down, quieting down all the noises and voices in your head, being more present, being more participatory. That's when you can actually practice more kindness, generosity, empathy, emotional intelligence. It's slowing down to speed up. And happiness, it's not amorphous, it's not ephemeral, it's not utopian. It's absolutely achievable. And it's quite frankly why we're all doing this, because anybody, even if I bring it back to entrepreneurs as well, I mean, I remember when I sold Crayon, my little social media boutique, the sale closed. I was hitting refresh on my Bank of America, account, and the money from the sale hit. And I'd never seen money like that in my life. I mean, it was a small company. It's not like, I'm not retired, but I'd never seen something like that. And I screenshotted it and I sent it to my wife and I sent it to my mom. And then I drove home, and the next morning, the hole in my heart was back. The emptiness was there. Now what? Now I got to worry about the earnout, and I got to worry about something else. And you didn't take up the trash. And so clearly the goal of selling the business was really a false, it was a mirage. So what was to what end? And so to anyone watching or listening, I'll keep saying, to what end? What do you want to achieve? To what end? So, so I can make money. Why do you want to make money? So I can provide for my family. Why do you want to provide for your family? Eventually you're going to get back to the same place, so I can be happy.
Yeah.
So why not figure out what that looks like, define it, and then put a plan in place?
Rashad Tabakawala says, "What next?" The interesting thing about the dynamic, first of all, the path toward peace and happiness is somewhat of a nirvana. It is a utopian model or goal, or has been set forward through uh, past writing, where today's younger generation has grown up with dystopian perspectives, but really we have failed in providing them with realistic looking utopian models, which is what I've tried to do in some of my work, and which you're obviously setting out to do. But you also, when you talk about the core values that you've identified and are so important, you also say that your cold implementing or searching for your core values is like a cold plunge. So you have some reality stuck in there as well.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. That's not core values, but the core focus, right? But they're connected, right? So your core focus is a combination, and I'm using an EOS framework, is a combination of your passion, cause, or purpose, which is your why, and your what, which is your niche. And they actually work together. We say kind of look where they intersect is a sweet spot, but the reality is it's actually more like a yin yang. So your why informs your what informs or backs into your why. And so it goes around and around. It's very dynamic, this idea of putting the two together. One is your head, the other one is your heart. By themselves, they're not enough. And the thing about what it does, your core focus, whether you call it your Northern Star, your North Star, etc., is it helps you determine what you say yes to and what you say no to, right? All the bright and shiny objects, the nice to haves. You need to know when you are on track and off track. And why I called it, that's my way of looking at it, a cold plunge is every now and then you need to wake up. You need to wake up your senses. You need to feel truly alive. You need to shock your system and be able to just kind of refocus yourself and rededicate yourself to the prime directive, to use a little Star Trek, phrase. And that's why it is core, whether it's hedgehog, vision, mission, etc., is remind yourself who you are, where you are, why you are, and what your mission is. And so it is that reality check. We need to dream, but we also need to have our head in the stars, feet on the ground, and you've got to be able to anchor those two things together.
We're winding down on our time, and I want to go back to the beginning of our conversation where you talked about the that dynasties. In the context of dynasties, corporations have a lifespan of 150 years, and we're nearing or at the end of that lifespan. For what when you and I have spent most of our career working in the media marketing and advertising related businesses, as you look at the legacy media business, do you see a positive future?
I don't think so under current conditions, but what I wrote in Life After the 30 Second Spot, I wrote this in 2004. So it's important to actually check it against, the 20 years ago, 21 years ago. I said, in its current form, right? The 30-second spot as a metaphor for a way of doing business is either dead, dying, or has outlived its usefulness. I stand by that statement in its existing form. In other words, without innovation and without disruption and change. And it is a metaphor. So, digital, for the most part, online advertising, so much of what was nascent at the time just became same shit, different day, basically. You know, just just cheaper and faster, not necessarily better. And so that applies today. We need new business models and new revenue streams, right? When we even look at the newspaper business was a hybrid model with subscription, people paying for, and with advertising. We just haven't innovated quick enough. I wrote down their ideas in that book that I still have not seen the broadcast media implement. What I called advertising on demand and the 30,000-second commercial. And it's right there. I literally laid
Yep.
out, like clearly what we could do. But, there is, again, it's a combination of the boiling frog syndrome and the scorpion and the frog. So going back to the solution, right? Where do we head to? I mean, just look at by the way, talk about how we never learn our lessons. Everybody started cutting the cord in order to move to some kind of subscription-based streaming service until all the mofos of legacy media decided they wanted to get in on the act. So CBS created Paramount, but apparently that's not good enough. We need a Paramount Plus as well. So Paramount, we want you to pay and we're going to serve advertising to you. And oh, by the way, you can't download unless you pay even more. And suddenly we look at our bills and we're like, wait a second, I'm now paying more, God, than I was before I cut the cord. Maybe I should, reattach the cord. So greed and cluelessness still continues to be the overarching, motivators in our space. And until we can get rid of greed and cluelessness and think truly innovatively in terms of new business models and revenue streams, I said in that book as well, consumers will pay with their time or their money for value. Just give them value and give them the ability. There's no problem in paying. only too happy to pay for stuff, especially not in spite of, especially if it adds value to my life.
I've been writing a lot about the conflict between data and creativity, and as you were talking, it just the thought formed in my mind of people in the media industry saying that data is the new oil. How that may be true, but they've forgotten or not taken into account how that oil is destroying the environment of the media industry.
That's interesting. Like there was an example that I was jotting down earlier, which is, and there are, I think, a number of them. There's a supermarket in Japan that has slow lanes. So instead of fast lanes speeding up, like 12 items or less or whatever, or self-checkout, which is where it's a metaphor for our business, right? What are the supermarkets doing? They're trying to get you out quickly with as little humans as possible. So all you have all of these self-checkout lanes, which actually slow people down badly because nobody can figure out how to use them. Right. That is what I call there's numerator and denominator people. That's denominator thinking. We're just trying to cut costs and look at our bottom line as opposed to numerator upside. So in Japan, they've got these slower lanes, which are available, let's say 2 to 4 on weekdays for the elderly who actually are looking for someone to talk to. So there, everything moves a little bit slower, and you can actually take your time and have a little conversation. That's humanity, but it's also humanity based on human, empathy and consumer insight. And I don't care whether AI provides that or not. In this case, the outcome, the end will justify the means in that particular case. But for the most part, that's where humanity will trump all of these, solutions that are designed to speed you up and save. It's not customer centricity. It's just a beautiful example. It's like a handwritten note. Like, just slow down to speed up. It's not that hard.
On that note, which is a beautiful note, thank you, Joseph Jaffe, host of Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. You are, Joseph, among the most well known, well respected leaders of our community. And I thank you for all you've done, all you continue to do. And it sounds like you're on a very exciting path toward happiness. I'll be looking in 20 months to have this conversation again and see where you are on that. Thank you for joining me on Profiles in Leadership.
Thank you. Very kind. And I will definitely be back in 20 months.